Okay, AP statistics. I am with my assistant this morning, Mr. A. And I was a prophet back in the classroom. You guys forgot, I betcha. But I was a prophet. I sang you a little song, and it was never more apropos, I believe the word is, than right now. And it is Wish You Were Here. So we're going to sing that to you to lead it off today on this rainy Thursday morning. So you think you can tell heaven from hell, blue skies from pain? Can you tell a green field from a cold steel rail? A smile from a veil? Do you think you can tell? Did they get you to trade your heroes for ghosts, hot ashes for trees, hot air for a cool breeze, cold comfort for change? Did you exchange a walk-on part in a war for a lead role in a cage? Din, 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 din. Then the verse. Oh, how I wish you were here. Wish you were here. We're just two lost souls swimming in a fish bowl year after year. Boom. There you go. The entertainment part of the show is over today. Now it's time for the lesson. Today, where'd my calculator go? We want to look at confidence intervals. Had a couple problems that I've shot out at you, one on a confidence interval and the other one a sometimes confusing how you come up with the level of confidence, the Z star for the level of confidence. Now, I have received responses from some, but not all. So I wish you would get those back. I'm trying to use Friday as kind of my grade day. And we're still looking at the 0, 1, or 2 for our classroom grade for third trimester. Now, back at the exam, being a teacher, I am filled with guilt, and I need to keep telling you what we do from now until the end of April is not going to get it done to do well on the exam. This is the topics we're talking about are important topics, but you're going to have to go farther. And you could do that via Khan Academy. You can do that via these new sites that AP has set up with instructors on them. You can do that in a lot of different ways. One tip I think is really good is, and this is, I'll tell you a secret now. Well, we may go back to school, but I'll tell you the secret anyway. All of our questions on our exams this year have come from old free response questions on the AP site. So you can download those. So I think probably the best strategy of them all would be to look at the last 2 or 3 years, load those questions. They have the answers with them, and look it over and feel comfortable with it from either the book. If you have an individual question, you can shoot it my way. But I don't want to give you a false sense of security that the little problems that I'm going to be doing here are going to get it done, because they aren't. I've been told, as far as classroom grading and classroom homework or assignment expectations, to keep it pretty direct and pretty simple, and I have. And that's what I plan on doing at least until the end of April, is a question. We can reference the book, but I tried to make it as interesting as possible. We did the confidence interval about how many people would wish they could go back to school. So, okay on all those things. If you have a question, a specific question, you can ask me. If not, let's look at today's lesson. What I wanted to do today, at least maybe we could do a couple lessons today, but to begin, I wanted to show you that the calculator is very helpful with these confidence intervals. So if you could reference that confidence interval that I gave you earlier, which was the question was, what percent of students are tired of being out of school? Okay. And I wanted you to come up with a confidence interval. And I had you reference page 435 in the book. I could write that on the board, but I don't want to mess my board up. I want to keep it essential information only. So you turn to page 435, and we're going to do this confidence interval on the calculator. So I told you what percent of students are tired being out of school and gave you a p hat, which is the sample of 40%. And I said n was equal to 30. Now, I changed the numbers, I think, for your problem. Maybe I did or maybe I didn't. I forgot. But I'm doing the problem I did in class now. You'll have to make the appropriate switch. And I wanted to come up with a 95% confidence interval. And we talked last time how you can have differing levels of confidence, and you use that inverse norm key to come up with Z star. Yeah, here's another very important, the formula, which is P hat, the sample, plus or minus the margin of error. And for proportions, there are two statistics that go with that, which is Z star, which is your level of confidence, times the standard error, which is the square root of PQ over N. All right. So I had you do that out by hand, but why don't we correct it with the calculator? So if you get your calculator out, let's look at solving this via the calculator. The key we want is a new key that we're going to use for the rest of the year. And it is the stat key, which we used a lot earlier. But then at stat, you go over to tests. So scroll over to tests. And we want a 1. There's all kinds of them, and they all look kind of alike. So let's look very closely. We want a 1 proportion Z interval, which is option A. So go down to option A, hit enter. Now they want the number of successes. That's what X is, number of successes. Do we know the number of successes in this? We know P is the percentage of successes, and N is equal to 30. So we really don't, but we can easily figure it out by timesing 0.4 times 30. And you can do that right on the line, right on the X line. Go 0.4 times 30. Enter, and you get 12. So there were 12 successes out of the total of 30 people. And then we put our confidence level at 95%. And boom, there is our interval. 22.4% and 57.5%. So I could say this. I could say I am 95% confident that the true proportion of people who are tired of being out of school is somewhere between 22.4% and 57.5%. That would be the interpretation. Now, to review these confidence intervals and what they would mean, what does 95% confidence mean? If I took all kinds of intervals, 95% of them, or approximately 95, just like flipping a coin, 50%, approximately 95% of them would capture the true proportion. Okay? Now, let's do a little fun activity here. I think it's fun anyway. With those same numbers, let's go back to tests and down to same thing. Once again, go to stat, over to tests, and to A, which is 1 proportion Z test. And let's change the confidence level to 90%. And I will ask you, kind of to you out there, and you can answer to yourself at your computer, is this going to widen or is this going to shrink or shorten the confidence interval? So 95 like this, what is going to happen with 90? Do you think it's going to shrink it up? Let's check it out. I think you'll see it did. It changed the interval from 25.2% to 54.7%. Do you see that? So less confidence, I'm going less wide. Now, let's try something else. Let's try 99%. So go back to stat. A, and let's do 99%. And I bet you that's going to widen the interval. Wow. Do you see that? Down to 16.9% or 63.0%. Okay, this is a very important concept for confidence intervals. There are 2 ways to either shrink or increase the width. I don't know the correct verb here, so I will say this: to make the interval skinnier or wider. All right, we'll go with that. Skinnier or wider. Let's first talk about wider. 2 ways of doing it. Number 1 would be to increase confidence, make that guy greater. What about number 2? Something else that would make that wider. I think some of you are just crackpots at algebra. Got that PQ over N thing. What would I do to N to make it wider? I would lower N, so I would lower the 30 if I wanted it wider. Most people don't want it wider. With a confidence interval, you want it not wide. You want it thin. So I would say this: what would you do to make it thinner? So let's go back to this. You would decrease confidence, or you would, and this comes up a lot, you people who are taking AP exams still, I hear a lot of questions on this particular topic. Look, my cat knows yoga. Look at Mr. A. He's doing some yoga down there. I think I talked of that this year. He is something, isn't he? Sorry. We're trying to have fun here too, along with the skills. Let's go back to, how do I make the interval skinnier? And my answer is either decrease confidence, decrease your Z star to like a lower confidence level, or increase N, increase the number of people in the sample. Those are the two keys. Okay? So I think we've done pretty well on that. Let's think up that same problem. Remember that page 435 again. Let's kind of go through that just for a second and tie all the things we've talked about in class to it. First, remember, before you can do a one proportion Z interval, you have to pass this assumptions and conditions. You have to have all the assumptions and conditions met. And if you look at them on 435, they are independence, which we always want things to be independent. We want it to be random, just like we did with our random number generator all year. 10% condition, make sure that the sample is not too large. Success failure condition, make sure it is not too small. Then we go to the next page, and that's where we do our math here. With the sample, we find out PQ over N, and then we take the sample of 50 for the book, 53% plus or minus the margin of error, and that gives us our confidence interval. Okay, let's do this. I forgot what I gave you for the problem before, but let's change our p-hat. Let's change our p-hat to 60%. We'll say, wow, people are really, really tired of being at home. 60%. Okay, everyone with me? 60%. Write that down somewhere if you can't see me. 60%. So p-hat is equal to 60%. We will change N to 40. We will change our confidence level down, because remember, we want to try to narrow that concept. So we'll change it to a 90% confidence. And why don't you see? You need a lot of reps on doing confidence intervals. So why don't you do another problem? So we had those level of confidence last time, but what I would have you at the end of this week, if you know really well, that's the key. If you know really well how to do a problem such as on 435 and 436, that would be great. So hopefully you can do that. But for a practice problem, once again, our question, are you tired of being out of school? We'll say our sample is 60% and N is 40, and we want a 90% confidence interval. So give me a confidence interval, and I would have you check it with your calculator. Remember, once again, it is stat. And then you go over to tests. And then you choose option A, which is a one proportion Z interval. Okay? So that gives you something to do. And why don't you get right at it and get it right back to me? Next week, I want to look at two proportion Z interval and two proportion. Actually, we probably should do a test first. Let's do a hypothesis test next week, a one proportion Z test. Okay? Wow, this has been so much fun. I have had fun today. So once again, if you got any questions, ask me. Today is not a very nice day outside. So I guess I'm going to wrap it up. But I had fun doing it with you. See you later.